I'd now like to introduce you to our next presenters. For the presentation, Removing Barriers to Opportunity, How to Set Graduates with Disability on the Path to Employment Success. Our presenter is Danielle Valiente-Rydell from WorkFocus Australia. Danielle, I'll hand over to you. I will just give you a little hands up 5 minutes prior to the end of your presentation and then get it 30 seconds.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Danielle.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you for mispronouncing my surname.
Sorry. And I know you do. I've worked with you before.
Every single time that I go to do a presentation, I make the same silly joke, so apologies for that. Let me just see if I can share my screen now, and if it's working, and it all seems to be working quite nicely now. So again, hello everybody, and thank you to the organizers of the Pathway 15 online conference for inviting me today. And first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country where I'm located today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, a name that means here, from this place. And as we are attending from multiple regions throughout Australia, we would like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. So as Caroline said, my name is Daniel. And I want to disclose that I don't have an experience of living with disability, but for those who haven't heard me speak, probably know my motivation to work in this field. I was brought up by somebody that lived with chronic schizophrenia and continuously heard voices. It was amazing that I grew up in a small village where it wasn't a disability. It was just somebody that heard voices. It was part of the human experience, part of the human diversity experience. And that brings me to my second point. And I know that they will like these ones. I do know that I sound like Puss in Boots, and in these times where Zoom, we're all exhausted with Zoom, it becomes even harder to hear somebody with an accent. So I really appreciate your patience. And as we know, currently more than 1 million Australians live with a disability and are ready to enter the workforce. But why this is important? It is because beyond statistics, this number highlights underutilized potential across our communities, including our workplaces. There is a striking gap in success rate achieved by people with disabilities and those without a disability when it comes to accomplishing typical education employment milestones. Research obviously shows that people with disabilities are less likely to pursue university or TAFE courses and highly likely to stay underemployed or unemployed for longer than their peers without a disability. National data also highlights the overall employment rates for graduates with disability as much lower. For students, university and TAFE care practitioners are one of the top sources to secure graduate roles. In many cases, career practitioners act as a frontline advisor and guidance counselor. As such, they play a vital role in bridging the employment gap and improving success rates for graduates with a disability. Today, we will be discussing the range of service that career advisors can tap into to support graduates with disability gain employment. And I forgot my clicker for a second there. So let's take a look at today's agenda. We will start by reviewing the current scenario for graduates with a disability. Next, we will discuss the range of free support available through Job Access. We will then explore how people with disabilities can access funding for workplace adjustments. We will also share some specific tips and resources for career advisors to better support graduates with a disability. And we will talk about sharing information about disability, as this is an area of concern among many graduates entering the workforce. And then we will open up the floor, hopefully, for some questions. So obviously, many of you will be very familiar with these statistics. For employers, but this also signals that for employers, disability inclusion is not just good to have, but essential in the context of the labor market. when we recognize that 1 in 5 Australians live with one or more disability, and this number is only increasing with the aging population. Some people are born with disability, while others may acquire a disability with age of accident. So nobody's immune to disability. Over 2 million Australians of working age between the ages of 15 and 64 have a disability. In most cases, you may not even know that somebody has a disability, as 90% of conditions are actually invisible. This includes physical and mental health conditions. It's always important to remember that not two people will experience the same condition in the same way. For example, for two people with hearing impairment will experience their condition very differently, and as such may require very different levels of support in the workplace. 31% of the population have an accessibility need, and not all of them may be defined, not all of them will consider themselves having a disability. And as you know, obviously, disability is merely one aspect of the person being, like being short or like being tall. So getting higher education is generally associated with better employment outcomes and higher income, both which are a key to achieving economic security and independence. Studies have shown that people with disabilities are less likely to pursue a non-school qualification, such as university or TAFE, than those without a disability. People with disability are also less likely to leave school, are more likely to leave school earlier and to have a lower levels of education. This is further evidenced by the low enrollment rates of students with disability in tertiary education. And the disparity becomes more profound when it comes to getting a job after completing tertiary education. The 2018 Graduate Outcome Survey tracked the overall employment rates for graduates by the demographic groups, including disability. The survey found the overall employment rate, and this is full-time and part-time for graduates with a disability, was 7 percentage points lower than for those without a disability. And the gap in full-time employment rates between graduates with and without a disability was more than 10 percentage points. The survey also highlighted that undergraduates with a disability were more likely to report that they were not fully using their skills or education. The main reason for this was that there was no suitable jobs in the area of expertise. The employment trends for graduates of vocational and education training courses are similar. The 2018 data in this graph reflects the responses of all VET graduates, including students from dual sector university, TAFEs, and private RTO, where they were asked, are you employed after training, yes or no? The employment rates for graduates with a disability of VETs is 25 percentage points lower than those without a disability, and that is a really striking statistic. The National Disability Coordination Officer program surveyed 220 disability employment service consultants across Australia about working with universities and graduates with disability. The survey really highlighted some barriers that DES providers consider as primary reason for low unemployment of graduates with a disability. And some of these include employer attitudes, i.e. the lack of knowledge and skills to hire people with disability, lack of early assistance, that students are unable to register with DES providers until after they finish their full-time study, and also societal expectations, i.e. lower expectations than people with disabilities will get into employment after completing their education. So let me talk about the great service that I had and I'm honored to spearhead. Job Access is the national hub for disability employment, and it is designed to support people with disabilities, employers, and service providers. It's a free service that exists to help remove any of the barriers to disability employment. And it is a five-prong free service. We have an advice service via phone and website. We operate a national call center. The number is 1-800-464-800, and I will have a slide at the very end with all our details. And it's delivered by a team of frontline professionals who can provide free, confidential, and expert advice. Our advisors are available to answer your questions on any matter related to disability employment, or can direct you to other support services. Job Access has also a comprehensive website with information and advice on disability employment. We also coordinate workplace adjustments and modifications through the Employment Assistance Fund, which I will discuss in greater detail later in the presentation. We also have the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator, or the NDRC, which is an employer engagement service of Job Access, who works with larger employers with generally more than 100 employees to increase their disability confidence. We also have the Complaint Resolution and Referral Service, which aims to improve employment government-funded disability service support services through a fair and impartial complaint resolution process. And lastly, the National Disability Abuse and Neglect Hotline, or the hotline, which is a vital information and reporting service available for anyone who suspects abuse and neglect of people with disabilities. The Australian government launched the Employer Toolkit on the Job Access website in February 2019. The toolkit is a free resource to help employers who are keen to employ people with disabilities in their organizations. It is designed to support all levels of disability confidence in employers, no matter whether they are hiring a person with disability for the first time or looking to take the next steps. There is appropriate information available there. The toolkit is also extremely versatile as a resource for career practitioners, as it includes a wide range of videos, tips, and downloadable resources they can use when working with employers and students with a disability. So I really encourage you to go and have a look at that toolkit. And I think that it's always important to mention Disability Employment Service, because over the years, they have supported tens of thousands of people with disabilities to join the workforce. The primary function of a DES is, of course, provide a good fit, a good job fit. They're also there to ensure that both the employee and the employer receives any assistance necessary to address any disability-related issues. DES providers directly support people with disabilities at all stages of employment process, right for getting ready for the job search itself, and the assistance to start a new job. While not all people with disability may require support, it is actually good and important for you to know that this service exists. Job Access can help employers to develop a relationship with the local DES if they are unsure where to start and how to start. And employers can also use the Job Access Vacancy Service to share their vacancies with local DESs. And this is a free service delivered by Job Access, and it's available to all employers, big or small. So you may hear obviously the word workplace adjustments or reasonable adjustments. So workplace adjustments for us are any changes to the work environment that allows employees with a disability to work safely and productively. The majority of adjustments are actually really low cost. While some changes such as providing flexible work hours comes at not cost at all, and that is something that we've all seen with COVID. The Australian government provides funding through the Employment Assistance Fund to cover cost of making workplace adjustments as well. The EEF can assist people with disabilities if they're about to start a job, are already working, or if they are self-employed. And it can help to buy work-related modifications as services. And some examples of these services may be adjustments, special equipment for physical workplaces, modifications to work equipment, Auslan interpreting, especially service for employees with specific learning disorders and mental health conditions. We can also utilize it for disability, deafness, and mental health awareness training. And as a side note, our internal Job Access research shows that around 90% of the modifications made through the Employment Assistance Fund cost less than $10,000, and about 50% less than $1,000. So it is something that is viewed as a saving mechanism for the Australian government as well. So the application process. Employers, employees, or DES providers can make an application for workplace modification. So they can start by submitting an online application through the Job Access website. Job Access will assess the application for eligibility of the worker and will also advise if a workplace assessment is required. If a workplace assessment is not required, Job Access will send a formal approval so the organization can purchase any modifications or adjustments and have the cost reimbursed by Job Access. If a workplace assessment is needed, Job Access arranges a specialist to visit the workplace at no cost at all to the employer or to the employee. The assessor will look at the individual workplace, identify any barriers that may exist, and find solutions to make the workplace more accessible and flexible. The organization can then purchase the approved modifications, and the cost is reimbursed fairly quickly by Job Access. But remember also that we're here to help. A Job Access advisor will manage the process and answer any of your queries at any time. So give us a call if you need any support. And you can find the guidelines of the EAF available on the Job Access website as well. But as I said, happy for you guys to give us a call at any time and ask any questions. There is some criteria that each applicant needs to meet to be eligible for funding of workplace modifications and adjustments. They need to work at least 8 hours per week. If they're self-employed, they need to work at least 20 hours per week and earning an hourly income equivalent to the national minimum wage. They need to be in a job that is expected to continue for at least 13 weeks or more. They need to be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. They also need to have an ongoing disability that has lasted at least 2 years, and the disability must limit, restrict, or impair their ability to work. Again, give us a call. Our professional advisors are available to assist with any queries regarding eligibility for the Employment Assistance Fund or any other questions that you may have. So university and TAFE career practitioners are one of the top sources for the students to secure graduate roles. Let's look at some tips and resources that may help you support students and graduates with disability transition into employment better. Pardon me. An easy way to identify if an employer is disability confident is to review their website and see if there is a diversity statement, generally including within the careers or about us page. You can also visit the Job Access website to view our alumni partner, which is a list of organizations who have completed the Job Access employer partnership and remain committed to workplace diversity. The Job Access website also has a wide range of tools, templates, free resources to support job seekers with a disability. You can guide students to review tips and advice on the website in preparation for a job search process. Another service which may help employers with disability confident is the Australian Network on Disability, AND. So the AND manages a Stepping Into program, which is a paid internship scheme matching talented university students with disability roles in leading Australian businesses. And they also have the PACE mentoring program, which is a positive action towards career engagement program, which is also delivered by AND and connects students and job seekers with disability with mentors from leading Australian businesses. We also encourage you to join our mailing list to receive the latest news from Job Access. Our e-newsletter is published once every 2 months, and it includes a list of our current employer partners, as well as a regular update and expert advice on supporting people with disabilities into the workforce. Here is other dedicated program designed to support graduates and students with a disability. So the National Disability Coordinator Officer, which is a program especially designed to help students and graduates with disabilities succeed in their choosing studies and move into suitable employment. The University Specialist Employment Partnership, or USEP, is designed to prepare and connect university students with disability to graduate jobs. It is a pilot program developed to deliver an on-campus employment service aimed to meet the specific needs of graduating students or graduated students with disability who are seeking employment. There is also the TAFE Specialist Employment Partnership offered by USEP as well. That provides specialist career support for TAFE students as well. The Big Meet is a career fair organized by the AAGE, which is promoted to students from all universities, each host cities across Australia, and it's been created as a result of feedback received from employers from both the private and the public sector, and it's aimed at connecting employers and students at one major career event rather than attending several ones. And to create a truly inclusive workplace, we believe that employers need to feel comfortable and supported to share information about their disabilities, should they wish to do or need to do so. You may have heard the term disclosure, which is generally used to describe the process of sharing information about disability. And we encourage all employers to move away from that term and start using the term sharing of access requirement. And this in keeping with person first language and putting the focus on the person rather than disability. And also the term disclosure in many ways means that you are hiding something, that there is something that you don't want others to see. So we're talking a lot more about sharing access of requirements. So in 2015, UK-based consultants surveyed about 1,000 graduates with a disability to help increase the number of graduates to successfully apply for graduate roles. The aim was to understand why graduates with a disability are not keen to share access information with employers during the recruitment process and highlight what employers need to do to encourage openness. The survey found that about 57% of the students believe it will be beneficial to be open during the recruitment process. Over 70% of the students said the most important factor in encouraging them to share will be to know what the benefits are. And 8 in 10 of the students says that they were more likely to share if they were told the employer is disability confident by the career advisor and career services. A survey of the Australian Association of Graduate Employers, the AAGE, and I think that I mentioned that organization before as well, found that nearly 50% of the students with disability did not intend to share their disability with their employers. Nearly 70% said they will not share, and nearly 3 out of 10 students weren't sure what to do. This is an area where the students required the right guidance and advice before beginning their job search. And obviously, as you all know, there is no legal obligation to share information about disability unless it affects their ability to do their job or impacts their safety or the safety of their co-workers. In some cases, disability may only become evident once a person is employed. And some employees may choose not to share information, and we need to respect that choice if there is not impact into the workplace. Some of the reasons that they highlight as reasons to share information that were highlighted were that disability perhaps is the core part of the personal identity. Adjustments required during the interview or assessment process. A company is actively promoting diversity. The need to ask for workplace adjustments or flexibility. It's a lot more common once the person is settling their jobs. If there is problems with performance or team dynamics, it may be involuntary or a precautionary measure to in case the issue of disability arises on the workforce. And some of the reasons why they're not disclosing was because of fear of discrimination or a stigma, internalized stigma, privacy, disability not relevant to the workplace or no need for work-related adjustments, short-term casual or contract position, and may not consider the diagnosis as being a disability. That is my presentation for today, and I would love to answer any questions that you may have about the Employment Assistance Fund. I know that every time that I do a presentation and I talk about it, there is a lot of questions. I can aim to answer as many as possible. If you don't feel comfortable to raising any questions around this forum, again, give us a call. We're happy to have a conversation with anybody one-to-one. And any audience questions, please pop them into the chat. Happy to respond.
Okay. Well, there doesn't seem to be any questions going in, Daniel, but I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I believe it is so important to remember that disability is only one aspect of the person. And it's
Absolutely.
to know that Job Access provides a range of solutions to help to minimise that overwhelming gap between people with disability and people without.
And it is very important for students to be aware that this service exists, because there has to be also a sense of self-advocacy.
Absolutely.
we and we're a truly client-centered service. What we deliver is specific for the individual, specific for that workplace, and specific for that job as well. We've been doing this. I think that we've processed about 400,000 information and advice with people with disabilities, and we've done 100,000 modifications over the years. So we really have a real know-how, and sometimes there are small changes that you can do that have got a real impact. As I said before, about 50% of all the modifications that we do, it's less than $1,000, and that ensures that a person with a disability remains in their jobs long term.
Yeah. We have had one question come through now about how many NDRC officers are employed nationally now.
How many NDRC, sorry?
NDRC officers.
We've got a team of 6 plus the marketing team that goes around the country. So we are tasked with partnering with 35 large organizations per year. And running them through the program that the NDRC runs in terms of developing policies, attraction strategies for employers and people with disabilities. So it's all about incrementing the confidence of those employers in terms of the recruitment of people with disabilities. We really see in some of the research that has been coming out as of late that one of the big issues is that because people with disabilities are underrepresented in the workforce, we have a lack of exposure to the employment of people with disabilities. And I always use the example, I live in Erskineville in Sydney, and we moved in there years ago with my wife. And I always thought it was a nice place because, Priscilla Whittle of the Desert, it lives from my local pub, right? So it was a really gay and lesbian friendly pub and areas. So there used to be a lot of gay and lesbian pubs around there. And I thought it was wonderful that, we had that diversity. 20 years down the track, now I see that very differently because there is no gay and lesbian pubs anymore. They're just pubs because people don't need to segregate themselves any longer to feel safe. So that is the kind of exposure that we need to have in terms of disability and employment.
I agree. I might just pass on to Ben, my co-chair, to see if there's any other questions in the chat box. We've got a couple more minutes left.
Thanks, Ben. Sorry, you go.
And as I said, if there is no any questions, again, I encourage you guys to give us a call on the number that is up in the screen now, and to go to our website as well and have a look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. There was one earlier from Beth that was answered by Pam, but I'll just see if you've got anything to add to that. I'm curious to know if the trend is going up for employers for employing persons with a disability. So if that trend is going up. So Pam indicated from what her data shows that it has changed for between 4 and 5%. What's your opinion there?
I think that the needle is not moving. The government has formed a working group to understand why, even though so much money is being invested in trying to raise the rates of people with disabilities in employment, that it still hasn't moved significantly. Now, there is 2 things that are problematic with that. One is that there are actually more people disclosing disability. And also, I think that there is a problem also with the word disability in itself, because it is a judgment call. It's when does somebody has a disability and when does somebody has access requirements. So one really interesting exercise that Health New South Wales did, they tried to account for employees with a disability within their organizations. So they put out a survey, and only 1.2% of the employees came back as having a disability, which is statistically insignificant, really. Once they changed that wording and they changed it to accessibility requirements, and they changed the vocabulary completely within Health Share New South Wales, they got about 7%, 8%. So it is difficult to establish whether that needle is moving because we don't know. But what we do know is that the people that are enrolled, for example, with DES, that needle is not moving from the ones that are participating in programs like DES, for example.
Excellent. We might have to wrap it up there, Daniel, but again, thank you very, very much. I'd also like to again thank our sponsors. Please make sure that you visit their virtual booths during the conference, and their links are in the chat box. If you're just joining us now, you can access captioning for our next presentation. You just need to click the captioning button in the ribbon, the Zoom ribbon below, or you can also access the captioning details in the chat box. And we also encourage you to please be engaged on social media and with the hashtag Pathways15.